Welcome to Katie's Classroom. If you are tuning into the video and want to grab your Human Design chart and your Gene Keys chart to go alongside with this, welcome to do so. If you aren't doing that, if you're on a walk, if you're driving, if you're just tuning in and not even didn't even know there was a video, don't worry, you're still going to get a lot of good information out of today's podcast. The sun, moon, nodes, and planets in the body graph of Human Design is what we're discussing today. It's very confusing for people when they dive into human design. I just want to start by saying this is an invitation to experiment. And my invitation to you as we're going through the planets is as you're looking through them on your own chart to think about which one of these areas would really benefit from some contemplating. Example, the sun is our personality expression. It's our life force. And the gene keys, it's our life's work here on this earth. It's about 70% of your personality. That may be an area that you just want to start with right off the bat. However, Earth, your sign there is in the grounding and the balancing. Perhaps you're feeling off balance. Perhaps you could use a little bit more grounding. I also invite you to remember the unconscious side, the design side, which if you're pulling your chart from jovianarchive.com is going to be the red side. That unconscious often is running our lives in the background, which is part of why we see so much of the unconscious represented in the Gene Keys chart. Just knowing that both of them are having a role in the planets and what they're here to express and teach us can be very illuminating for people. So without further ado, let's start a little bit. So if you think of our solar system, there is a neutrino stream, all this empty space with these little tiny particles that have mass, which carry information. Of these 13 on each side, so 26 activations total are coming from 13 planets. These are the only planets that can truly have an impact or an activation, as he calls it, in these energetic spaces that we have in our body design. It's not that the other planets don't have an impact. They're impacting the neutrino stream simply by existing, particularly Chiron, the comet fragmented, that fragmented in the late 1970s, but it's not causing an activation in the 26 gates. And those 26 activations are coming from 13 on the design and 13 on the personality side. What I find to be the most interesting about understanding this is that we are here to learn. And each of these planets sort of serves as a teacher. And there's 13 of them. So that's a fun way to kind of understand what is it that these planets are doing? Why is it in retrograde? Why is it messing with me? These are our teachers, and they each have an expression of what they're here to teach. So sun, if you're looking at sun, that's the very first number on the right and left side of your personality design. If you're looking at it from Gene Keys, it will be your life's work. It will also be your radiance. If you're looking at Gene Keys, those two right there are going to be your personality conscious or personality unconscious. The sun is the life force. It's our core energy. It's our primary yang force. So in the human design system, it is a binary system. There is the yang, which is the male energy, and there's the yin, which is the feminine energy. So if you feel more in touch with your feminine side as a man, you may have more of the yin energy. And if you feel very much more of the masculine Aries, like I do sometimes, you may have more of the yang energy. And my personality sun is a yang force. All of ours is. It is ourself as well as what we do, and it represents the theme of our incarnation. The theme meaning what we're, going to see in our lives over and over and over again. Our lives are like that spiral staircase that we continue to evolve, but we're still meeting these levels. I always think of like a Super Mario Brothers game that never ends. There's always another level. And that challenge that you're meeting over and over again in Super Mario is saving Princess Peach. In my case, my life's work, the 17 is the shadow of opinion that I'll be meeting over and over again. The sun represents the archetype of the father. 70% of the neutrinos that condition us are from the sun. Our personality sun is how we express our light in the world. Our design sun represents genetic themes we have inherited from our father. So the unconscious, the design side, the red on your chart, if you're using the Jovian archive, that one you're going to find somewhere in your father's chart, which of course made me laugh because that is the shadow of struggle. Sounds right. Thanks, Dad. It also is the gift of perseverance and honor. I'm here to live a life of honor, which is something I feel I have been raised by my dad to live. So that all tracks for me. Curious what you think. This might be a great time for you to pause and go back, look at your chart, and even re-listen to this section here on the sun. The second one is Earth. Earth, when you're looking at your chart from Jovian Archive, is going to be the second number. Not every chart is the same. So make sure that your Earth symbol is matching. It's the circle and it's got a, looks like it has a line down the center and then one going across. I'm not going to be great at describing these. Earth is for grounding and balance. The earth represents where we concretize or bring into form and how we ground and balance the sun's energy within our forms, our bodies. The sun and earth always operate together and are located opposite each other in the mandala. So if you're looking at human design and you bring the whole circle around the mandala that has the I Ching and the 64 gates, this is what it's talking about. They're going to always be on the opposite end. So whatever imprint you get on the personality side, on that designs, on that earth side, you're going to get the opposite. The earth provides the primary yin balance, the archetype of the mother. We find conscious balance when we are able to integrate the personality correctly in our life, and we find our stability or unconscious balance when we come to grips with the world of form. The earth is the backbone of our stability. So when I look at my earth conscious 18 and my earth unconscious 39, I know that these are things that are very grounding for me, which is perfect because of course it's grounding for me to be in integrity and perfection as the 18-5. And the 0.5 does mean something in how I express that. The fifth line is a line of management. We are at the top of the hexagram. There are six lines in the future. So as a fifth line, this integrity and perfection is that drive I have. It grounds me to have the perfect way to say something. It grounds me to stay in integrity. Before I found this system, I would write about integrity, humility, these things being really important to me as my value system. Makes sense because it grounds me. The 39 for me, also very grounding. That will show up in your gene keys as your purpose in the unconscious earth. What feels very grounding to me is liberating people. It's provoking them to disrupt the things that need to change for the better. And remember, this is the yin energy. Whenever we see a feminine energy, we know that the feminine energy needs romancing. The feminine energy needs to be seduced. It needs to slowly come in. It is not the yang energy where it's very forceful. So when you are contemplating what grounds you, I invite you to look at how does this bring you more peace? How does this make you feel more in balance? You know, being farsighted, all-knowing in my conscious personality, sun, I could use a little grounding of that integrity, which is really just truth. It's not about opinions. It's not about judgment. It's about what's true. It feels really nice for me. When I'm grounding my unconscious sun 38, which is going to have some struggles and what really grounds me there is being able to come in and support other people because I've had that struggle and they don't have to have it as well. Why I became a history teacher. I had all these history teachers that did these multiple choice tests, or as I call them, multiple guess. I always guessed wrong. Actually, those tests weren't that hard. I did okay. However, getting to college, I realized that everything was essay, and I didn't want my students to struggle going into college history class like I did. So that makes sense to me how I was always grounding myself in this ability to bring forth what my conscious or unconscious personality was going through. And that is just sort of the expression of how they've played out in my life prior to finding the system. I encourage you to take a look at how these things have also played out in your life. In addition to the sun and earth, we have the moon, the driving force. The moon represents what moves us. It's the driving force in our design. The pull of the moon is a force that is powerful, always there and always willing to embody the message of our sun's energy. The input comes from the sun, but the direction or force or drive is represented by the moon. The moon is the archetype of the eldest daughter and makes possible the task of the Earth Mother to drive and move the form, thus ensuring evolution. The moon is also the reflected light that others see in our inner nature, brought to the surface and placed on display. So when I look at my moon, my unconscious moon, which is going to show up as our attractor line in Gene Key. So on that design side, my moon is the 31-3. This is the light that others will see. Others will see me as a leader. That's the gift of the 31. It is also what drives me. And it makes sense why it drives me to have started a club when I was 12. It makes sense why it has driven me in my careers. I've had 4 of them on being able to bring that light of the sun into the world. In my conscious moon, I have the gate 57. And the gate 57, although conscious, is not necessarily the light that others see, but what I really see for me driving it. It's trusting my intuition. It's tough when you're out here and trying to get people to understand why they should follow you. What about you means that you have the right answer. I've built and sold a company. Intuition is so important there. That really is my driving force. Intuitively, I procrastinate. Intuitively, I don't move things forward until they're fully ready to be realized. And the more that I've been in touch with that and understanding that that is a driving force for me, the easier it's becoming for me to recognize I'm not just procrastinating. There's something missing, and my intuition is calling me to something else. But that unconscious moon and the attraction line in your gene keys sequence will be particularly important because that is the magnetizing that you have. You know, I think of the moon as being that magnetic pole. It pulls the tide in, it pulls the tide out. We are 70% water. It's definitely having an impact on us and what's driving us. If you've ever worked in a hospital like my mother did, you know that the full moon brings every single time quite the adventures. So that moon is really driving us. From there, we have the north node of the moon and the south node of the moon. The north node is going to be the future direction and environment. After 40 in your north node, this is what you'll be pulled into. That north node is right below the earth symbol if you're looking at your Jovian chart. For me, my conscious north node is the 15, which is the great gate of extreme rhythms. If you've met me, you know my rhythms can be a bit extreme. And as I head into my 40th year, or as my dad says, my 41st year, I am really leaning into that rhythm. Hence, human design, why I've fully embraced it in the corporate coaching world and beyond. Although not planets, the nodes of the moon are equally powerful. On the personality side, the nodes are not who you are, but instead what frame your personality thinks about the world and itself. And this, for me, this extreme rhythms, it's about honoring those. I loved my students that were different than everyone. I love meeting humans that are different than everyone. On the design side, the nodes frame your relationship to the environment and the people in it. On my design side, I have the gate 52. This is about waiting to take action until the time is right. You can see where the intuition in the conscious moon is at play here. The north node is the mature stage of experiencing life and shifts from the south node at our Uranus opposition. That's the 38-43. Movement into the north node signals a process of letting go of what no longer serves us and retaining what does. And so as you think about where you're at in your life, if you're at that 38 to 43 years, if you're beyond it, consider how maybe you have experienced and expressed that full movement. If you are approaching it, or like me, in the middle of it, uh, explore how you see that starting to frame your relationships to people. That north node that shifts from the south node, my north node is the 10 in my conscious personality. And that 10 is all about being an example of radical self-love. And when I think about moving from that, you spend those first 38 years for me, it was really developing that self-love so that I could be in full expression of it. The south node of the moon is the past direction and environment. So a lot of times we see this word environment in the human design charts. We'll pull from other sources, and this is where they're pulling what environment is best for you based on the south node of the moon. The south node represents our developmental stages of experiencing life, our immaturity, until we arrive at our Uranus opposition. In our nine-centered Uranian bodies, our transition from the south node to the north node symbolizes our midlife and our entry into adulthood. Notice that for the planets that are teaching us, we are not becoming adults until 38 to 43. The nodes represent the stage on which our lives are played out, how we perceive the world around us, and the environments that we will experience throughout our lives that will support us in living out our unique destiny. So, past direction and environment. My node, the 10, the past direction, self-love, self-expression. I also look at the number there, and it is a 0.1. And then when I look at that same south node on the design side, it's the 58.1. That 0.1 is going to dictate my environment. The 58 is the cultivate joy and contentment. This is my past direction. This is the 0.1 environment, is the wet kitchens, for those of you that are familiar with that, really wanting to be in this hub. Doesn't mean I have to be in the kitchen. I don't actually love to cook, but I do love to sit in the kitchen and get work done while someone else cooks me dinner, ideally. You could also argue my mom conditioned me for that because that was my childhood. Fair enough, because the south node, where I've been, past direction, is also dictating my environment. Dan is the same way. And so he loves to cook. It's the opposite. He loves to be in the kitchen. But wet kitchens is really about being around that hub. When I walk into a restaurant or a bar, I love to sit at the bar itself oftentimes. And usually I gravitate towards something that would be kind of considered the kitchen of the bar. If it's not right next to the kitchen, perhaps it's like the wet part where they, the wet mat where they make the drinks. I've just noticed this about myself as I look back at where my favorite seats were, where the places are that I sat in previous bars that I've been to or restaurants. Mercury is your communication and thinking. For people building businesses, I often have them look at Mercury. How are you designed to communicate with people? How are you designed to speak and bring your message to the masses? Mercury is the archetype of the eldest son. It represents the expansion of human consciousness, as well as the need within us to communicate. Mercury is closest to the sun and thus metaphorically has its ear. Mercury programs the personality crystal from the time it enters the body until birth. When your personality Mercury is defined, gives you insight into what you need to communicate in this life. Your design Mercury also has something to communicate, but we often forget to know why we are telling something to someone when it expresses through our unconscious form. So your Mercury is going to be right below your moon if you're looking at your Jovian archive chart. And for me, I have the 21-2 there. And this very much tracks for me as I look back at all of the businesses I've built, all of the work that I've done. It's understanding value and respecting resources. And as it talks about where your personality Mercury is defined, it gives you insight into what you need to communicate in this life. My personality Mercury is not defined. per se in like a closed center. And so when we have that communication on an open center, we got access to about 70% less of that knowledge there. And how I communicate also makes sense. I have an open throat and I have an open ego center, which is where this Mercury communication 21.2 lands for me. We also look at the unconscious side where it talks about the design. Mercury has something to communicate, but we don't know why. For me, that is the 64. And that 60 of what it is I have to communicate is using creativity to overcome obstacles, the embodied magician. And I have a sticky here that says, we let flaws inspire us, and my wisdom is inspirational for others. Enjoy the serendipity of your insights. That is probably why I'm not even sure what it is I'm here to communicate on the design side. I just know that their creativity is here for us to overcome these obstacles. And then using my conscious Mercury, I can talk to people about how to conserve their resources, how to use them more wisely. All of this makes sense when you get into how I'm great at helping people prosper. Venus. Venus is right below this, and this represents your values. Venus establishes our values and represents our morals and the natural laws for how we deal with each other and the world around us. Venus is the archetype of the youngest daughter. When we talk about archetypes, if you think of we talked about father and mother before, we've mentioned eldest daughter, eldest son. If you have siblings, you understand those inner archetypes. That's what we're talking about for this planet here. The youngest daughter represents love and beauty. For you personally, Venus is the right and the wrong and your moral questions and issues. If you do not act with moral clarity, and if those around you do not act with moral clarity, Venus can be harsh in their retribution. The values that are established in Venus becomes law in Jupiter, and any retribution takes place through Saturn. Ooh, what does that all mean? So let's take a look at my Venus to start. Oh, this is such a fun one. So in my conscious Venus, I have the 24, creating transformation through silence. If you've ever had a class that I've taught, if you've ever done a one-on-one session with me, you know I have the ability to hold silence. It's also where transformation occurs. And sometimes I can hold silence too much. Not meaning I'm sitting here for a pause for 30 minutes, more like remaining silent when I could speak up. It is a value for me, this transformation that occurs through silence. I'm also really great at supporting other people in this value. The Venus unconscious will be what we call the SQ and gene keys. The SQ is your spiritual quotient. It is the 0 to 7 imprinting. And for me, I have the 61-4. The 61 for me is this value of imagination. It's this gift of imagination. And the shadow that comes with it, this shadow of psychosis, this illusion that collaboration will enhance inspiration. 61 is also for me about inner truth. And you can see how important reveling in the mystery of life, knowing what can be known, what can't be known. So notice that this is the value I have, and it becomes the law in Jupiter. And from there, any retribution will take place through Saturn. We talk about the Saturn return at 40. Saturn is the judge. And we know as humans that we're very good at judging ourselves. The Mars right below that, Mars is an immature energy. And the unconscious Mars will become your greatest, your vocation in the gene keys, which is your core wound from 0 to 9 months. It's your greatest gift, but it's also where you need the most healing. Mars is the archetype of the youngest son. Someone dating a youngest son, enter Mars. Energetically immature and free of responsibility. passive until it gets rolling, and then a force to be reckoned with. Once ignited, Mars' capacity to build momentum can result in mindless outbursts where even the most basic inhibitions can be overwhelmed. Mars in your chart represents an extraordinary energy that, when refined over time, can settle into a powerful and mature wisdom about the correct use of energy. Mars plays a significant role in our personal transformation, hence why it is in the core vocation, unconscious Mars. For me, my unconscious Mars is the 13-5. So we see a fifth line. So we know I'm here to management. Fifth line is all about the top of the hexagram. And that 13, the gate of the storyteller. When I built my business, I created a logo and it says underneath, rewrite your story when you land on my website. Fast forward a few years later, I find this information that tells me that my greatest gift, the significant role in my personal transformation, is telling a better story. It's writing a better story. This is how we live our lives, whether we're aware that the planets are impacting us or not, whether you find the system or not, you will be a full expression of it. Who are you to deny the gifts that your creator and the planets have imprinted you with? When I look at my Mars conscious, my 42-5, my Mars conscious is my emotional intelligence. That will show up in your gene keys under the EQ. Ooh, what a powerful duo Mars has for us. The vocation, what we're really, here to transform, and our emotional intelligence, which is imprinted from 8 to 14. So those memories that stand out for you often are going to embody this. For me, the 42 is the celebration doula. I love the way this person writes about it, finishing things and celebrating accomplishments. The shadow for my EQ in 42 is the shadow of expectation. Once again, it comes with a fifth line. So I have this respect emotionally that I want to have and also to give to others. And my gift is really expressed through detachment and celebration. My life's work emotionally, to not be so attached, to let go of expectations and to allow others around me when I'm leading to follow them, not just for me to lead them where I want them to go. That's what it looks like to let go of expectations. And that EQ will very much fall in line with your evolution, which is that what grounds you. You'll see a nice little connection there as well. When we're in the gift of both in the gene keys, or when we're in the shadow of both in the gene keys, there's some attraction that happens between those two planets. Jupiter, law and protection. Other than the sun, no object exerts greater influence over us. Jupiter is the logos for the universe and defines our outer development in 11-year cycles, as well as our relationship to the other and the whole. We are imprinted with a very focused theme of what is correct for us. Our law is written by Jupiter. If you live by that law, you can gain great good fortune, as Jupiter is very generous at times. But your ability to benefit from the generosity comes from deep obedience to your own laws. So we can see that Jupiter is going to be very important for us here. Jupiter unconscious will show up in your culture. When you're looking at your prosperity and gene keys, that culture and the conscious and unconscious are going to show up there. The unconscious is going to show up as your pearl. Your conscious will show up as your pearl. For me, that is the 9-6. This is how I prosper under the laws of the planets. And my culture, unconscious, the design, will show up as, for me, that's the 34-2. And when I look at these, this is my only 2 line in my chart, and it's my only 6 line in my chart. So I know that those lines are going to be really important for me. 6 lines looking to the future. And this is my pearl. This is how I prosper monetarily. And Jupiter is, we talk a lot, you've read about the laws of attraction, you've read all these things about attracting money. What does it look like to heal money? It looks like going to Jupiter. And that's, remember we said the boys went to Jupiter to get more stupider? Well, we were kind of wrong about that. We should have been sending the boys to Mars where it's already immature. Jupiter, when we are aligning with the mechanics of Jupiter, the prosperity is open for us. Saturn. Perhaps you've heard of the Saturn return that occurs for people at 30. Saturn is the judge. And when we go back to the Venus, remember that Venus becomes law in Jupiter. And any of the retribution that needs to happen takes place in Saturn. Saturn is the place in your chart where you must deal with the consequences of your actions. A very ancient yin force, it represents the judge and the places in your life where you will pay for your any incorrectness when not following your own laws and morals. Saturn is a profound signpost that allows you over time to see the progress in your process. Saturn is an expectant taskmaster without praise. If Saturn is leaving you alone, this is a signpost you are living correctly. However, if you break your own rules, values, and laws, Saturn will punish you. Saturn. For me, I have the 28-1 in my conscious and unconscious Saturn. And I've noticed a lot of people have the double in their Saturn. Not everyone, but a lot of charts I've looked at. Saturn for me is about facing the darkness in life with courage. That 28 is not going to show up in the gene key chart because the gene key is about unlocking the gifts and so that we can avoid the retribution from Saturn. So Saturn doesn't show up there. But I have this full channel for me, the 2838 channel. And this is absolutely this where it shows up for me. So that 38 that it connects to happens to be in my radiance, that unconscious or that conscious sun. I invite you to contemplate your Saturn and times in your life where you have seen that come to quote unquote bite you, if you will, what that looks like for you. Noticing any patterns you see for yourself as you look at your Venus, which is your values, and your Jupiter, which is how you're designed to prosper. Below Saturn, we have Uranus. Uranus. I also have the same ones here as well, the 9 and the 9 for me. It's when Uranus shows up in your design, that's where you express your unusualness. The evolutionary mutative undercurrent of Uranus allowed us to transform our understanding of the Maya, that's the Earth, and extend our lifespan to the current 84 years. Uranus also introduced us to the tripart life process of subjective youth, objective midlife, and transcendent into older age. So my unusualness is in the 9. Of course it is. The channel 952, which I happen to have, is a very powerful format energy. It will override the whole system, the 3 channels that connect from the root to the sacral. I have the one on the right side, the 952. And because the 9 shows up in my chart, not once, not twice, but 3 times, including my pearl, how I prosper, not only is this my unusualness, but this is going to be something I want to pay attention to because it's showing up in my planets multiple times. The 9 is this incredible focus. It is the details that really matter. The 9 is the detail whiz. And it took a man named Ziz to tell me I was a whiz at details. Details for me are not crossing T's and dotting I's. I tend to forget those. They don't feel as important. Details for me are those things that when you put them into the big picture, that they make things unfold in the way they should, or the way they want to, or the way they need to. Details for me are not bows tied on a chair. They're not remembering the ambiance piece. They're very important details. And of course, what I deem to be important, this is my unusualness. Planning a Christmas themed party, I'm not going to think about the decor. For some reason, that detail doesn't ever feel important to me. I'm thinking about the food, I'm thinking about the music, I'm thinking about the people coming in, I'm thinking about what they're doing. More importantly, I'm thinking about how they're building their business. Those details, those are the ones that I find to be the most important. When I'm trying to raise capital, I'm not looking for the detail of, can we get everything lined up and ready to go a week in advance? My detail is it the right time? Will it say the right thing? When I hit send, it's the moment it's supposed to happen. This is my unusualness. How do we deal with unusualness in the workplace? Well, for me, it's been thriving in partnerships, not trying to thrive in a unit like a corporation. Neptune. Neptune is our illusion and spirituality, a great teacher who demands total acceptance. Neptune at any gate veils its potential. This veiling can deeply disturb the not self, as it is not possible to see through the veil. And we lose the ability to see any limitations, which can lead to abuse. Surrender to Neptune, leave it alone, and allow the potential magic to emerge from behind the veil. You also learn a great deal about the nature of surrender. I have the 10 here again in my Neptune, and I have the 11. The surrendering for me is to be an example of radical self-love and to use my imagination to the fullest capacity. I am an idea factory. This is my spirituality. The surrender, though, is not about trying to make something happen with it, but allowing it to just unfold. And our very last planet, Pluto. Pluto is the planet of truth and transformation. Pluto brings the forces of the subconscious to the surface. It represents rebirth. Pluto is the truth teller, bringing truths that are hidden to the surface for you and looking directly and squarely in the eye. Truth brings transformation. Wherever you see Pluto in your chart, this is your truth. Pluto's deepest lesson is to find the light within the darkness. The mystery of Pluto, the mystery of you, takes a lifetime to explore. For my Pluto, I have the same number, 50. My Pluto conscious is a third line, so it's an experimenting line. And my Pluto unconscious design is a fourth line, so it is a people line. The 50 is transforming the frequency of your groups by living your values. Does that hit home for me or what? The truth is the groups matter, the people matter for me. And another way to look at the 50, where did my chart go? I don't have it. As you contemplate each one of these planets, I invite you to go back to whichever one kind of just struck you. What did your intuition call you to? What really kind of gave you if you're a generator of some sort of as you were listening, what was pulling your gut forward? If you have no idea, go back and listen. And as soon as you feel that gut or hear that noise, that's an area for you to contemplate. Clearly, my Pluto gave me that. I'm really curious now. I need to know more. It doesn't show up in your gene key. So truth feels like it hit me squarely in the eye today doing this podcast, which is why I do these. They're for you, they're for me, and everyone out in the sea. Had to rhyme there. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Katie's Classroom. I hope you found this informative. I know it is a really long episode today. Turns out 13 planets takes 45 minutes. Enjoy and happy exploration.